So the State of the Union happens on Thursday. This is a later State of the Union than usual. The Democrats have raised expectations so high for this speech for President Biden. I read a newsletter today where you had the author who definitely wants Biden to win say that Biden's performance must be flawless.
Oh.
There was a speechwriter for Bill Clinton who said, this is the most important State of the Union speech in the history of the country. And I thought, wow, guys, the one thing I learned from President Bush, one of the many things, but one of the most important things is lower expectations. Because the speech is going to be fine. It'll be on teleprompter. It'll be fine. He'll be energized for it. If he comes out of that speech and you're like, wow, he is fabulous. Okay, that'll be something. And then maybe that will help him a little bit. But wouldn't you lower expectations?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think maybe that's what they think they're trying to do, where sort of setting it up that if he doesn't stumble on his way to the lectern and he manages to read the speech, then they could pronounce it a great triumph. But I'm not sure that many people are going to be tuned in, and I don't know that it's really going to change someone's mind to see him read.
He should try to get Taylor Swift there.
Yeah, that always helps.
It's like with the Super Bowl,
Everyone would watch,
that added more. Maybe she will be. That'll be the surprise. They did a backgrounder last week from the White House talking about all the things they're going to discuss, and you'll hear the most accomplished president ever in the history of the country. And honestly, it's just hard to swallow that. You wrote about something last week that I wanted you to mention because I feel like a lot of their accomplishments are actually vulnerabilities. And tell me about electric vehicles and especially electric buses and what's happened in communities all across America.
Yeah, there was this great spending surge. It was oddly, as you know, called the Inflation Reduction Act. And a lot of this is money funding a dream that we can transform our economy and wring fossil fuels out of it very quickly with a lot of aggressive government action and a lot of taxpayer dollars. And you're just seeing lately a lot of reality checks. And this particularly happens with, of course, electric buses. If they're not, if the electricity is produced with fossil fuels, you haven't necessarily achieved much in terms of the climate. But the dream is that you'll have alternative fuels creating your electricity, and then the vehicles running without gasoline. But they don't work. So this is a problem in northern climates, especially where you have buses are heavy. They carry a lot of people, and you need to heat them in the wintertime, which drains the battery. So this is kind of an interesting potential change, but you're seeing school districts not just in this country, but in Canada as well, who maybe they thought it was kind of a nice press release to say that they
got a discount,
going green,
right? Like you get the green discount.
Yes, so there's a big government subsidy, but the buses are still very expensive relative to normal buses, and they have a lot of performance problems. They have a lot of problems getting a route done on one charge. And so this seems like basic stuff, like sort of things we take for granted. Wouldn't you want to make sure a vehicle was reliable before you filled it with children and started driving around a town? And I think the reality check economically is going to be, we saw the inflation that came from the spending binge. What we're going to see in the future years, and this is kind of a preview of it, is how little productivity-enhancing economic gains we're getting out of all this investment into alternative energy and various trendy projects that just don't work as well as stuff. I mean, there's I think this belief on the left that it's sort of an accident that we use oil. It's kind of an accident of history, and we just need to redirect things.
Like they wish it had never been invented.
Yeah, but it's not an accident. It's because you, in a barrel of oil, you have a highly concentrated form of energy, much more so than the sun or the wind, which is fortunately relatively mild and doesn't bake us or send us hurtling into the ocean.
So I want to talk about immigration because there was a piece 2 weeks ago that just made me want to scream. It was in, I think it was Axios or Politico, in which they report that early on in the Biden administration, were determined to unravel anything President Trump had done on the border. So they started doing this, right? And they're taking it all down. And now you can see it on the chart. As they take down all of those barriers to entry, the number of migrants coming across goes up. And apparently, even when they realized that they might have some problems, both on a policy level and a political level, everybody at the White House was like, not it. Okay, they're the hot potato. Nobody wants to touch it. So they didn't do anything to fix it. What I wanted to ask you is, when Biden gets up at the State of the Union and he tries to make the case that Republicans are to blame for the migrant crisis because if they wouldn't work on a bill that was going to be passed 3 weeks ago, that they abandoned that they're to blame for the last 3.5 years of migrant increases.
Yeah.
I know that the media will somewhat try to help them, the Democrats, to make this case. Are the Republicans prepared to push back on that? How effective will Biden be in making that argument?
Well, he's really losing on that issue. So maybe he doesn't need to get very far to help himself in this area. But the facts are pretty damning, as you say. This flurry of executive orders where he was quite explicit about wanting to end the Trump era.
93 executive orders.
Yeah, and some of them just kind of almost beyond belief. The one that gets me is the deportation moratorium he attempted. That was, I believe, a lawsuit from Texas, Governor Abbott, that ended that after a few months. But to say that we're as a policy for some period, we don't want to enforce our laws. I mean, even someone who loves immigration as much as I do realizes this is nutty. You can't say, I've decided as a policy to show how kind and gentle we are, we're not going to have the rule of law for some period until the courts tell me I have to. So I think that's a very hard record to hide.
Well, one thing I've made a point, like, even if the media tries to write it up that way, and they might have, and look, the bill did not get passed. I get that. I do feel that you have somebody on the Trump team that the Biden team does not want to mess with, and that is Chris LaCivita. Mm-hmm. He did the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth ads in 2004 against John Kerry.
Yeah.
And part of me feels like even if the media does help Biden try to make that argument, I think that the paid media, which is important, especially on the Republican side, because they have to make up for that deficit on the media side, do you think Chris LaCivita can't make an ad that will stick in everybody's mind? I mean, look at we show video all day long with Bill Maloogian and Griff Jenkins at the border going, well, and 21,000 people have come in this month. Well, last month, February.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the Swift boat example because that was a case where John Kerry was running for president, just assuming that most people had forgotten everything he said in the 1970s.
Right.
And that was an effective method of telling that history for many people who may have forgotten it, and many who weren't around and didn't know anything about it. This is a much tougher task. This is saying we'd like you to forget 2021 and 22 and really 23 until election season. We now have a new Joe Biden. I mean, just the absurdity of saying there's nothing he can do until he gets some new authority from Congress. After we all know the record of all the executive actions.
And it's likely that he will issue more executive orders so that night he can say, I just issued an order because the Republicans didn't. And I can imagine a lot of boos. The third issue, before we take a break, that Biden is sure to bring up, and Dr. Jill Biden this weekend was out there talking about it, is reproductive rights. And the person giving the Republican response to the State of the Union is the senator from Alabama, Katie Britt. Alabama is a place where the Alabama Supreme Court talked about personhood when it comes to embryos, and IVF clinics decided, we better just stop, all of our IVF treatment, which I think was a definitely an overreaction. The support for IVF treatment is through the roof, like 90%. Biden is going to try to say that Trump and the Republicans want to take away all reproductive rights. I'm interested in how Katie Britt, who's young, fun, really accomplished young woman. I say she's young. I mean, she's got young children. I think she's just 40 or maybe around there. How she deals with that might give Republicans sort of a clue on how they can message it. But I don't know what she's going to say.
Yeah, I think that did hurt Republicans in 2022. Does it still have the same force this time around? Maybe the IVF issue, I kind of doubt that really goes very far.
Let me remind you of something, though, because you're old enough to remember, I believe.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because you and I were there. This was also an issue in 2004. The stem cell issue. Right, yes.
Remember?
Yeah. Even Nancy Reagan.
Yeah.
She looked at Christopher Reeve and said, if we had stem cell treatment, he would walk again. I mean, promises to people that were not capable of being made or kept, or even made or kept. President Bush actually writes in Decision Points, Chapter 5 is about the stem cell decision and how he came to that decision. It's very interesting. It was right before 9/11. And that was really on people's minds at the time. And here we are still talking about a culture of life as technology improves. And if you are somebody who went through IVF and you have an embryo that you might want to bring to full term, and somebody goes into a clinic and destroys that embryo, what do you think happened to that embryo? What do you think happened to that? Right? Of course, you're going to think that was my baby.
Yeah.
I know that some people might not think that way, but if you are going through IVF with all the emotional highs and lows with it, this just adds fuel to that fire.
For the pro-life movement after Dobbs, it's challenging to figure out, obviously, how to manage the politics. And you probably look at an issue like this and you say, on the one hand, this is a very difficult political challenge. On the other, it's maybe the discussion that a lot of pro-life people want about, where does life begin? And what is the meaning of this? And what is the value of lives at different stakes or of the building blocks of life, I guess you might say.
And President Trump has floated the idea of a 15-week national ban. And I heard Dr. Jill Biden over the weekend. I believe she was in Wisconsin. And she said, do you think he'd really stop there? So even if President Trump actually means it, right? 15 weeks, they're going to say that they're never going to stop. And so this battle will be joined on that level, too.
So I think if Trump is the nominee, he very well could end up landing at a spot that disappoints a lot of pro-life voters who have been justifiably enthusiastic given his term. But you say what you want about him. He's actually been very skillful
100%
at the politics of this issue. And I think back to 2016. I think it was actually the moment where a lot of conservatives decided they were going to vote for him was when he, in the debate with Hillary Clinton, unlike a lot of Republican politicians who kind of stumble around and try to think of something to say when the topic of abortion comes up, he managed to put her on the spot on, are you for 9th month up until the moment of birth? And I think, he's got a track record and some skill, and I think maybe understands that most people have nuanced views of this.
He's very skillful, and I think maybe he'll land on the right answer, but I do think if you are somebody who believes life begins at conception, even 15 weeks is hard to swallow.
That's right. That's right. I think, I think you'd have to see it as, that's grubby politics. Long term, we have to change minds.
And it is interesting, and I know that there are people in the pro-life community who support the 15-week ban idea. But for me, I always remember, getting rid of Roe v. Wade as a faulty decision was to send it back to the states. Now the states are acting, so Alabama can do what it wants, but that doesn't mean Colorado has to do that. But now the Republican Party is saying, actually, let's have a national 15-week ban. And it's a little just hard to swallow.
Yeah, it is. I think it was a successful argument that this is not a federal issue, that the Constitution had not addressed it.
But showing how the Democrats have extreme positions
to
the 9th month, et cetera, might be the way that Republicans
well,
decide
also,
to
I wonder how versus 22 going forward, how much of a motivator it is for Democrats if it becomes clear to voters for whom this is the most important issue that it's not going away. It's going to be legal in various places at various times, and so I don't. That might sort of lose its political force when it kind of people realize it's actually not going away.
I didn't plan on bringing it up today. I wrote it down as we were talking, and it's just one of those things where it's going to have to be dealt with.
Yes.
In terms of an argument, there will be an argument, and you will see that.